Hello, welcome back to the channel, my Inimba family. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and drop a comment below because today's episode had me sitting on the edge of my seat from the very first scene. We are talking about heartbreak, we are talking about family tension, we are talking about a business empire hanging by a thread, and most importantly, we are talking about a young mother who is silently drowning while the people around her argue about everything except what she actually needs. So grab your tea, get comfortable, and let's get into today's recap and review of Inimba. The episode opens on a note that immediately tells you this is not going to be a light watch. Zethu has just been discharged from the hospital after giving birth, and instead of being met with warmth and gentle care, she is thrown straight into a battle over what to name her own child. Themika, ever the strong-willed matriarch figure in this storyline, has already decided that the baby should be named Vukani, believing the name carries meaning and hope for the family's future. But Zethu, quietly and firmly, pushes back. She says the name is hers to choose, and she wants to call her son Thokozile. Now, on the surface, this looks like a simple disagreement about a name. But if you have been following this show as closely as I have, you know that names in Inimba are never just names. There are statements. There are claims. And in this case, Zethu choosing Thokozile is really her trying to claim something, anything, in a moment where she feels like everyone else is making decisions about her life and her body without asking her. That, to me, is the first big clue this episode gives us about what is really going on beneath the surface with her. Compromise is important in every family, and I do think both women had valid points here. But watching Themika try to steer the naming conversation so soon after Zethu had just given birth felt insensitive, even if it wasn't meant that way. Sometimes you have to read the room, and the room, quite literally a hospital discharge room, was not the place for a tug-of-war over a birth certificate. Here is where the episode gets a bit more layered. Zethu makes it painfully clear that she does not trust Themika to help raise her son. Her reasoning: Themika has 3 children of her own that she was never able to properly care for. That is a heavy accusation to make, especially to your own mother figure, but it did not come from nowhere. We have seen flashes of Themika's parenting history in earlier episodes, and it has not exactly painted her as reliable. So when Zethu insists that she does not want to stay with Themika and instead wants to go back to her own home, I understood her hesitation completely. Would I have handled it the exact same way? Maybe not. But her instinct to protect her child from repeating old patterns is not unreasonable. The tragedy here is that Zethu, in trying to protect her baby from one kind of harm, walks straight into another kind of danger, the danger of isolating herself when she needs support the most. This is the part of the episode that really got to me, and I think it will get to a lot of you too. As soon as Zethu and the baby arrive at her house, something feels off. She is not bonding with her son the way you would expect a new mother to. She holds him almost mechanically. Her eyes are distant. And then, right in the middle of this fragile moment, her phone rings. It is one of her boyfriends calling. She does not pick up. She cannot even bring herself to deal with anything beyond what is directly in front of her. I have to be honest with you, watching this scene made my heart sink a little. Zethu is clearly overwhelmed, and instead of reaching out, she is shutting everyone out. She refuses help from Themika, she is distant from the people who actually care about her, and she is left completely alone with a newborn and a mind that seems to be spiraling. I kept thinking, somebody needs to notice this. Somebody needs to sit her down and ask her how she is really doing, not how the baby is doing, not what the birth certificate should say, but how she is doing. That is why the title of this episode's storyline hits so hard. Zethu is suffering from postpartum depression, and it is becoming increasingly clear that she might be at risk of hurting herself if this continues to go unaddressed. The show is handling this with a level of seriousness that I appreciate, even though it is difficult to watch. A big debate this episode revolves around who is actually equipped to help Zethu through this. On one hand, you have Tamika, who genuinely wants to be involved but, as we discussed, comes with baggage of her own. On the other hand, you have Thandika, who many fans, myself included, believe might actually be the better support system right now. Here's my concern though. If Thandika steps in, there is a real risk that she becomes so focused on bonding with the baby herself that she forgets the actual mission, which is helping Zethu heal. We have already seen a version of this dynamic play out with Tamika, who seems more interested in taking over the caretaking responsibilities than in addressing Zethu's mental health. If Thandika falls into that same trap, we are going to see history repeat itself, just with a different woman in the lead role. What Zethu genuinely needs is someone who can take some of the physical load off her, feeding schedules, night duties, the exhausting logistics of caring for a newborn, while still keeping the focus on Zethu's emotional recovery. It is a delicate balance. Whoever ends up stepping into this role needs to remember that the baby is not the only one who needs care right now. Zethu needs just as much attention, if not more. And can we talk about how Zethu is essentially cutting off her own support network? Pushing away both Tamika and Thandika at the same time is, respectfully, not going to help her. I understand the instinct to withdraw when you are struggling. That is a very real and common response to depression, but from a viewer's perspective, it is heartbreaking to watch someone reject the very help that could pull them back from the edge. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about Akselani, because I don't think enough people are giving him credit for what he is dealing with. He is a new father, thrown into a situation that is emotionally overwhelming for him too, and he is genuinely trying to do the right thing by stepping up and taking responsibility. But he is also lost. He does not fully understand what Zethu is going through, and honestly, how could he? Postpartum depression is not something that is talked about openly enough, even within families, let alone something a new father would automatically know how to recognize or respond to. I do think Akselani deserves some grace here. He is not the villain of this story. He is a man trying to figure out fatherhood in real time while also watching the mother of his child slip further into a place he cannot reach. My hope is that the show gives him a proper arc where he learns how to actually support Zethu, rather than just being a background presence while the women in the story fight over who gets to help. Now let's pivot to the other major storyline running through this episode, because Inimba never gives us just one crisis at a time. Wandel finds himself in serious trouble after signing a contract that puts him in direct conflict with Sydney's company. Sydney, understandably, is furious when he finds out, though it is worth noting that he does not even know the full extent of what is going on yet. All he knows right now is that Wandel has signed a deal that undermines his business interests. I have to say, if Sydney eventually decides to cut ties with Wandel entirely, I would not blame him one bit. Business is business, and when someone you trusted turns around and signs away opportunities behind your back, that is a betrayal that is hard to come back from. There is a version of this storyline where Sydney reacts with pure rage and burns every bridge, and there is a version where he tries to have a rational conversation first. Given his character development so far this season, I am hoping for the latter, but the writers have surprised us before. What makes this subplot interesting is how it mirrors the family drama happening with Zethu. In both cases, we have people making major decisions without fully consulting or informing the people those decisions affect most. Zethu made a decision about her son's name without input from the whole family. Wandel made a decision about a business contract without being upfront with Sydney. The show seems to be building a theme this season around communication, or rather, the devastating consequences of its absence. Meanwhile, over at the company, tensions are rising around leadership. There is a growing sense that Lazarus wants to remain in his position as CEO no matter what it takes, and Zolika, who has put in significant effort and loyalty to the company over the years, is starting to feel like her contributions are being overlooked. This corporate subplot might feel like a departure from the emotional family drama, but I think it actually adds an important layer to the episode. Power, control, and recognition are running themes throughout this entire episode, whether we are talking about who gets to name a baby, who gets to run a company, or who gets to make business decisions without consequence. Zolika's frustration is valid. She has clearly earned her place, and watching Lazarus cling to power the way he is doing raises real questions about whether he is doing what is best for the company or simply protecting his own ego. I would not be surprised if this storyline eventually intersects with the Lwandle and Sydney conflict, given how tightly Inimba tends to weave its business plots together. Keep an eye on this one, because I have a feeling it is setting up for something bigger down the line. By the time we circle back to Zethu in the final act of the episode, the emotional weight of everything hits at once. She is struggling to bond with her baby, she is isolating herself from the people who love her, and there are subtle but unmistakable signs that she is not okay. The show does not spell it out with dramatic music cues or obvious dialogue. Instead, it lets her silence speak. The way she looks at the baby, the way she flinches at the mention of visitors, the way she seems to disappear into herself even when she is in a room full of people who care about her. This is where I want to pause and speak directly to anyone watching who might relate to what Zethu is going through. Postpartum depression is real, it is common, and it is nothing to be ashamed of. If this storyline is hitting close to home for you or someone you know, please do not stay silent the way Zethu is doing in this episode. Reach out to a doctor, a counselor, or someone you trust. Fiction can mirror real struggles, but real life deserves real support, and it is available. Returning to the show, I think the writers are doing a commendable job of portraying how postpartum depression does not look the same for everyone. For Zethu, it manifests as withdrawal and detachment.